A birthday invitation that broke my heart. But let me ask you something. What if the simplest act, just a child handing you a folded piece of paper, could change the entire course of your life? I know it sounds unbelievable, but it happened to me. And when I tell you this story, you'll see how one single invitation, a child's birthday card, brought me to my knees, shattered my heart, and yet, somehow, gave me something even more powerful in return. This isn't just another story on the internet. I've shared it before, and thousands of people told me it changed the way they look at love, loss, and the little moments we take for granted. That's why I know you can trust me when I say, if you stay with me until the end, you won't forget this. So here's what you'll see today. The invitation that started it all. The little girl who taught me what love truly means. The heartbreak I never saw coming, and the hope that came after. Let's begin. It all started on a quiet Saturday morning. The city was alive in its usual way. Cars honking, people rushing, the hum of 1,000 lives moving in different directions. But I felt detached from all of it. I had been drifting through my days for months, maybe years, if I was honest. Work, home, repeat. Conversations that didn't mean much. Nights spent scrolling aimlessly until sleep claimed me. I was existing, but I wasn't living. That's probably why I noticed the bakery. It was tucked between a hardware store and a bookstore I'd visited a dozen times, but I had never stepped inside before. That morning, though, something about the frosted windows and the smell of cinnamon drew me in. Maybe it was hunger. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe it was fate. The little bell over the door jingled as I walked in, and suddenly I was enveloped by warmth. The air smelled like sugar and butter. Ovens hummed softly in the back, and the glow of golden light made the place feel more like a home than a shop. Behind the counter stood a woman, maybe in her 30s, with flour on her apron and a tired smile on her face. Her eyes were kind. And beside her was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, with curls bouncing around her face and a ribbon tied in her hair. She had flour smudges on her cheeks, as if she'd been helping in the kitchen, and she was humming to herself while coloring on a piece of paper. That little girl was Lily. And though I didn't know it yet, Lily was about to turn my entire world upside down. I ordered a coffee and found a seat in the corner, the kind of spot where you can watch people without being noticed yourself. I figured I'd drink, maybe read something on my phone, and go. But then Lily walked over. She had something clutched in her tiny hand, and she stopped right in front of my table. Her eyes were wide and earnest, and without saying a word, she slid a folded piece of paper toward me. "This is for you," she said, her voice soft but sure. I looked down. The paper was decorated with stickers, scribbled drawings of balloons and cake, and big colorful letters across the top. "You're invited to my birthday party." I blinked, caught off guard. "For me?" I asked. Lily nodded, her curls bouncing. "Yes, you have to come." Before I could respond, the woman from behind the counter, her mother, I guessed, hurried over, flustered. "Oh, I'm so sorry. She's been making invitations for everyone who comes in. You really don't have to." But I interrupted her. "No, it's okay. Thank you." And I meant it. I slipped the invitation into my pocket, and I carried it with me as I left the bakery. That night, back in my apartment, I unfolded the paper again. It was messy, written in a child's uneven handwriting, with crooked drawings and glitter glue that rubbed off onto my fingers, but it was real. And for reasons I couldn't quite explain, it mattered to me. Someone had thought of me. Someone wanted me there. That was something I hadn't felt in a long time. So when the day of the party came, I went. The bakery looked different when I arrived. Balloons bobbed in the windows, and a banner that said, "Happy Birthday, Lily," stretched across the counter. Tables were pushed aside to make room for kids to run and play, and the smell of freshly baked cake filled the air. It wasn't fancy, just a handful of neighbors, homemade snacks, and children's laughter echoing through the room. But there was joy everywhere, and it was contagious. And then I saw Lily. The moment she spotted me, her entire face lit up. She ran to me, her arms wide, shouting, "You came!" She hugged me like I was the most important guest she had invited, and in that instant, something in me shifted. The party carried on with games and laughter. Lily darted around with her friends, her laughter ringing. After that day, I couldn't stay away. The bakery became my second home. I'd stop by after work, sometimes on weekends. Grace, that was her mother's name, welcomed me with a quiet, cautious kindness. At first, she treated me like a customer, but little by little, I became something else. She'd ask me to carry boxes, fix the squeaky hinge on the door, or help with small things she didn't have time for. And every time, I said yes. But the truth? It wasn't the bakery that drew me back. It was Lily, her laughter, her endless curiosity, the way she could find joy in the smallest things. It was like watching light itself. She'd sit across from me with crayons and paper, drawing while I sipped my coffee. She'd tell me about her favorite books, her dreams of becoming an artist, her love for birthday parties. Because to her, birthdays weren't just about presents. They were about wishes. And slowly, without realizing it, I found myself becoming part of their lives. A part I didn't know I had been missing. It all started with one birthday invitation, one scrap of paper handed to me by a little girl with flour on her cheeks. And though I didn't know it then, that invitation would lead me into a story of love, heartbreak, and hope that I would carry with me forever. The bakery became my anchor. What started as a random stop one Saturday morning quickly turned into a ritual. My coworkers joked about my sweet tooth because I was always bringing pastries to the office, but the truth was, the food wasn't the reason I kept coming back. It was the people. Grace, with her quiet resilience, running the bakery almost single-handedly while juggling the role of being a mother. And Lily, who seemed to carry more light in her small frame than I had seen in most adults. The more time I spent there, the more I realized how empty my life had been before. I started helping out in small ways at first. Grace never asked outright, but I could see the strain on her face. Early mornings, long hours, bills that never seemed to stop piling up. It was all there, in the tiredness of her eyes. One evening, when I stopped by after work, she was struggling to lift a heavy bag of flour. Without thinking, I stepped in. "Let me," I said, hoisting it onto my shoulder. She hesitated for a moment, maybe pride, maybe caution, but then she nodded. "Thanks, Daniel." From that day on, I wasn't just a customer anymore. I was part of the routine. Sometimes I'd sweep the floor when the rush ended. Other times I'd fix the wobbly leg of a table or run to the store when they were out of milk. It wasn't much, but it mattered. And Grace noticed, but Lily, Lily celebrated every little thing I did as if I'd just saved the world. "Daniel fixed the chair," she'd announce proudly to whoever was in the shop. "Daniel carried the flour. Daniel helped Mommy again." Her enthusiasm was infectious. And then there were the moments that belonged just to us. One rainy afternoon, when the bakery was quiet, she sat across from me with her crayons, her little tongue sticking out in concentration as she drew. After a while, she slid the paper over to me. It was a picture of 3 stick figures, one tall with brown hair, me, one with curly hair, and an apron, Grace, and one small with a ribbon in her hair, Lily. Above the picture, in shaky letters, she had written, "My family." My chest tightened when I read it. She had drawn me into her world without hesitation, without conditions. To her, I belonged there. And for the first time in years, I felt like I did. I started noticing things about Grace too. The way she tried to hide her worry when the register was light at the end of the day. The way she stayed up late baking, even when her hands were red from scrubbing dishes. The way she looked at Lily, with love, yes, but also with a kind of fear. It was in those quiet moments that I realized how much weight she carried on her shoulders. One evening, after closing, she finally opened up a little. We were sitting at one of the tables, Lily fast asleep on a chair nearby, her head resting on her folded arms. Grace sighed and rubbed her forehead. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough, if I can give her the life she deserves." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just a tired baker, but a woman who was fighting every day for her child. "You're doing more than enough," I said softly. "She doesn't need a perfect life. She just needs you. And you're incredible." For a second, our eyes met in a way that said more than words could. But then she looked away, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you, Daniel." And just like that, the moment passed. But it wasn't Grace who kept pulling me deeper into their lives. It was Lily. She had a way of breaking down walls without even trying. She'd ask me questions adults never dared to ask. Why do you live alone? Do you get lonely? Who takes care of you when you're sick? I never had good answers. Sometimes I'd laugh it off. Other times, her words would stick with me long after I left the bakery, echoing in my empty apartment. I didn't realize it then, but Lily was teaching me something. She was teaching me how to belong again. Then, slowly, I started noticing the shadows. It was little things at first. Lily would get tired more easily than the other kids, sitting down while they kept running around. Sometimes she'd press a hand to her chest, or she'd cough in a way that didn't sound like just a normal cold. Grace always brushed it off. "She's fine," she'd say quickly, changing the subject. But I could see it, the flicker of worry in her eyes, the way her hand would hover protectively near Lily without touching her. And when I asked Lily herself, she'd smile that big, bright smile of hers and say, "Don't worry, Daniel. I'm strong." Still, the unease settled in my chest like a storm cloud I couldn't shake. One night, I came by the bakery just as they were closing. The lights were dim, and Grace was sitting at a table with her head in her hands. I almost turned to leave, but then she looked up. Her eyes were red, and I knew she'd been crying. "Grace," I said gently. She wiped her face quickly. "It's nothing, just tired." But I didn't believe her. I sat down across from her, waiting. Finally, she whispered, "She has a condition. A heart condition. The doctors say it's complicated." Her voice broke. She's so young. She deserves so much more, but all I can do is try to give her normal days." My throat tightened. Suddenly, every laugh, every drawing, every hug from Lily felt even more precious. Grace looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, don't treat her differently. Don't let her see your fear. She hates that." I nodded, even though, inside, I was breaking. From that moment on, every second with Lily felt heavier. When she laughed, I clung to the sound. When she drew pictures, I kept them like treasures. When she hugged me, I held her a little longer, as if I could keep her safe, just by holding on. But I also began to wonder, something I had never allowed myself to think before. Why me? Why had she chosen me that day in the bakery, with her little handmade invitation? Why had she pulled me into her world so completely? And what would happen when the world tried to take her away? That question haunted me, but for now, I didn't let it show. I laughed with her, I played along with her games, I listened to her stories about magical castles and brave knights and birthday wishes that could fix everything, because that's what she believed in, wishes. And deep down, I wanted to believe in them too. The weeks that followed became some of the brightest in my life. I found myself at the bakery almost every evening, not because I needed bread or coffee, but because I needed them. Grace stopped pretending to be surprised when I showed up. Lily stopped asking if I'd come back tomorrow. She just expected it. And the truth was, I didn't mind. In fact, for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. One Saturday morning, I walked into the bakery to find Lily perched on a stool behind the counter, swinging her legs and scribbling furiously in a notebook. Her little brow was furrowed in concentration, her tongue poking out the side of her mouth. "What's all this?" I asked, setting my keys on the table. She beamed at me. "Plans!" "Plans!" I echoed, pretending to be shocked. "Are you plotting world domination?" She giggled. "No, silly. Birthday plans." Grace, who was kneading dough at the counter, glanced at me with a faint smile, but didn't say anything. Lily leaned closer, lowering her voice as if she was sharing a state secret. "It's going to be the best birthday ever. I'm going to invite all my friends from school. We'll have cake, balloons, maybe even a magician if Mommy says yes." Her eyes sparkled with a kind of joy that was almost painful to look at. "And you're coming, right, Daniel?" she added quickly. "You have to come." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She grinned, satisfied, and went back to her scribbles. That moment stayed with me because it wasn't just a party to her. It was a dream of normalcy, of joy, of something every child should have without question. And for Grace, I could tell it was more complicated. Later that evening, when Lily had gone upstairs to bed, Grace leaned against the counter with a sigh. "She's been talking about that birthday nonstop." I smiled. "That's a good thing, isn't it?" Grace hesitated. "Yes, but you know how it is. Money's tight. Doctor's visits, medications, bills. I don't know if I can give her the party she wants." Her voice cracked slightly, and I could see the weight she was carrying. Without thinking, I said, "Then let me help." She looked at me, startled. "Daniel, I can't." "Yes, you can," I interrupted gently. "This isn't charity. This is me wanting to see her smile." Grace's eyes softened, but there was still resistance. "You've already done so much." "Not enough," I said simply. "Not when it comes to her." For a long moment, we just stood there, the silence heavy between us. Then she nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Thank you," she whispered. From that day on, the bakery wasn't just a bakery anymore. It became a headquarters for Operation Best Birthday Ever. Lily appointed herself the official party planner. She made lists of decorations, drew pictures of how the room should look, and even practiced blowing out imaginary candles with exaggerated gusto. Grace tried to rein her in, gently reminding her of budgets and practicality. But Lily was relentless. "It's my special day, Mommy. Special days don't follow rules." And honestly, I admired her spirit. I found myself sneaking in little surprises, colorful balloons tucked under my arm, craft supplies for homemade decorations, even a box of sparklers I'd found in a party store. Each time, Lily's face lit up like it was already Christmas morning. But amidst all the laughter and excitement, there were moments that made my chest ache. One afternoon, Lily tugged on my sleeve as I was fixing a loose hinge on the bakery door. "Daniel?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, kiddo?" She hesitated, her big eyes searching mine. Do you think wishes come true?" I paused, caught off guard. "What kind of wishes?" She shrugged, looking down at her shoes. "Like the really big ones, the ones you make when you blow out your birthday candles." Something inside me cracked. I wanted to tell her yes, of course they do, because that's what every child deserves to believe. But the truth hung heavy in my throat. So instead, I crouched down to her level and said, "I think the best wishes are the ones you believe in so much that you never stop hoping. And when you don't stop hoping, sometimes life finds a way to surprise you." She studied me for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Then I'm going to wish really hard." And in that instant, I silently made my own wish too, that somehow, some way, the world would be kind enough to let hers come true. As the birthday drew closer, Grace and I worked side by side more often. There was a rhythm to it, baking together, stringing up decorations, even staying late after closing to test recipes for the party. It felt natural, like we'd been doing it for years. And in those quiet hours, our conversations deepened. One night, as we folded napkins into clumsy shapes at the counter, Grace glanced at me. "You're really good with her, with Lily." I shrugged, trying to hide the warmth in my chest. "She makes it easy." Grace smiled softly. "Still, you didn't have to do all this. Most people would have walked away. But you stayed." I met her gaze. "Because she deserves it, and so do you." For a moment her eyes glistened, but she quickly looked away, busying herself with the napkins. The night before Lily's birthday, we stayed late decorating the bakery. Streamers hung across the ceiling, balloons clustered in every corner, and the smell of freshly baked cake filled the air. Lily had fallen asleep in a chair, her head resting on her arms, a half-finished drawing still clutched in her hand. I carefully slid the paper out and looked at it. It was another drawing of the three of us. But this time, above the stick figures, she had written in bold letters, "My birthday wish." My throat tightened as I gently tucked the drawing into my pocket. When the night was done, Grace leaned against the counter, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Tomorrow," she whispered, almost to herself. "Tomorrow she'll be so happy." I looked at her, at the woman who had fought so hard for her child, who had given everything she had and more. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just Lily's birthday. It was a chance, maybe the only chance, to give them both a piece of joy, untouched by fear, untouched by the shadows that loomed over them. and I was determined to make it unforgettable. But life has a way of reminding you that joy and heartbreak often walk hand in hand. And as I watched Lily sleeping peacefully, clutching her crayons, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that tomorrow might hold more than just laughter and cake. Because sometimes the brightest lights burn just before the dark. The morning of Lily's birthday arrived, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I showed up at the bakery early, balloons in one hand and a wrapped gift in the other. Grace opened the door, already wearing an apron dusted with flour. She looked tired, but radiant, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Inside, the bakery had been transformed. Streamers draped across the ceiling. The cake sat proudly in the center of the counter, and little paper lanterns flickered in the corners. It wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful, filled with love in every detail. And then Lily came bounding down the stairs. She was wearing a pink dress with a tiny bow in her hair, clutching the notebook she had used to plan her dream party. "Daniel!" she squealed, throwing her arms around me. "You came early." "Of course I did," I said, kneeling down to meet her gaze. I couldn't miss the princess getting ready for her coronation. She laughed, spinning around so her skirt flared out. "Do I look like a princess?" I nodded solemnly. "The most beautiful one I've ever seen." Her cheeks flushed, and she ran to show her mother. As the hours passed, children began to arrive, classmates, neighbors, even a few shy kids from down the street. The bakery filled with laughter, the sound of small feet thundering across the floor, and bursts of giggles that seemed to echo off the walls. Lily was everywhere at once, greeting friends, showing off the decorations, proudly presenting the cake. She glowed, like her whole little body was powered by joy. And I couldn't take my eyes off her, because in that moment, she wasn't a child who spent too much time in hospitals, who carried burdens no 6-year-old should carry. She was just a little girl having the best day of her life. At one point, she tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Daniel, come sit with me." She led me to a table covered in crayons and coloring sheets. A group of kids sat around, but Lily claimed the seat right beside me. As she colored, she leaned in and said, "You're my favorite grown-up, you know." My chest tightened. "Even more than your mom?" I teased gently. She giggled. "Okay, maybe you're tied, but still, you're special." I swallowed hard, blinking back the sudden sting in my eyes. "So are you, kiddo. So are you." Then came the big moment. The cake. Grace carried it out, candles flickering, the whole room singing "Happy Birthday." Lily's eyes sparkled brighter than the flames. She looked around the room, taking in every face, every smile, every ounce of love surrounding her. And then she closed her eyes. I held my breath, watching her. She leaned forward, made her wish, and blew out the candles in one big puff. The room erupted in cheers. Balloons bounced, kids clapped, and for a moment, the world was perfect. But it was after the cake, after the laughter, that everything changed. The children began to gather around Lily, handing her small gifts. Crayons, dolls, little trinkets wrapped in colorful paper. She accepted each one with wide-eyed gratitude, hugging every friend tightly. And then she reached into her notebook. "Wait," she said, her voice carrying across the chatter. "I have something too." She flipped through the pages and pulled out a single, carefully folded piece of paper. Her eyes found mine. And with a shy but determined smile, she walked over and pressed it into my hand. "It's for you," she said. A birthday invitation. Confused, I unfolded it. Inside was a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a big balloon. Above it, written in uneven letters, were the words, "Please don't ever miss my birthdays. Please always come back." I froze. The room blurred around me. My throat closed. My hands trembled as I stared at the paper. This wasn't just a child's drawing. This was her wish. Her way of saying she wanted me, not just today, not just for one party, but forever. And that's when it broke me. Because I knew, deep down, I couldn't promise her that. I couldn't protect her from the storms ahead, the struggles she would face, the cruel unfairness of life that no child should ever have to endure. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise I'd be there for every birthday, every smile, every candle. But the truth lodged in my chest like a knife. Sometimes life doesn't let you keep promises. I crouched down, meeting her hopeful eyes. "Lily," I whispered, my voice trembling. This is the most special invitation anyone has ever given me." Her smile grew wider. "So you'll come? Always." Tears blurred my vision. I pulled her into my arms, hugging her tightly, as if I could shield her from everything with sheer willpower. "I'll come as long as I can," I said softly, my voice cracking. "And even if I can't, I'll always be with you here." I placed my hand gently over her heart. She looked up at me, puzzled but smiling, and nodded. "Okay." Grace watched from across the room, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. She knew what I knew, that this wasn't just about birthdays. It was about belonging, about a little girl's wish to hold on to the people who made her feel safe, loved, whole. And it shattered me that I couldn't give her the certainty she deserved. The party wound down slowly, children leaving with goodie bags and sleepy smiles. The bakery grew quiet again, just the 3 of us lingering in the fading light. Lily was curled up on a chair, her head resting against Grace's shoulder, her notebook clutched tightly in her hands. Grace looked at me over her daughter's sleeping head. Her eyes said everything: gratitude, sorrow, and a deep, unspoken understanding. Neither of us needed words. That night, when I finally walked home, the invitation still crumpled gently in my pocket. I couldn't stop the tears that came. It was just a piece of paper, a childish drawing. But to me, it was everything. It was her trust, her hope, her belief that someone like me could be a permanent part of her life. And knowing I couldn't promise that, knowing how fragile everything was, it broke my heart in a way I'll never forget. But here's the thing. Even in that heartbreak, there was beauty. Because Lily reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That love isn't measured in years or guarantees. It's measured in moments. In the laughter of a birthday party, in the glow of candles, in a small hand clutching yours with absolute trust. Her invitation may have broken my heart, but it also stitched together pieces I didn't know were missing. And I carry it with me still. Not just the paper, but the lesson. That even if life doesn't let us stay forever, the love we give in the time we have matters more than we'll ever know.